Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to do a deep dive into a book that, well, it really tackles men's rights issues head on.
Yeah, it doesn't pull any punches.
Not at all. It takes a hard look at, all those societal structures that impact men's lives. Everything from like historical trends to, how the family court system actually works.
Yeah, the stuff that really affects guys day to day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you all shared this book with us because you're really interested in understanding how these systems work, right? Especially, I think, for guys who are trying to, navigate marriage and relationships these days.
Yeah, it's a tough landscape out there.
It is. And this book, I think, it's so interesting because it doesn't try to sugarcoat anything.
No, it's very upfront.
Right off the bat, it just comes out and says, men are facing some serious systemic disadvantage in all these different areas of life, almost like, the game is rigged against them.
Yeah, it makes you think.
It's a strong statement, but then the book goes on to back it up with some pretty compelling examples.
Oh, absolutely.
Like one of the things it dives into is how custody cases are decided.
Right.
And how it often seems like mothers are favored, regardless of how involved the father is.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And it doesn't just stop there. It even gets into like the financial strain that men often face with things like, alimony and child support payments. The book argues that these payments can really leave men struggling, even when sometimes their ex-partners are actually in a better financial position.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it definitely challenges some assumptions.
fascinating how the book connects this to like this whole larger historical context. It claims that radical feminist ideology has really influenced these laws,
Right.
shaping them in a way that puts men at a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's a pretty controversial claim.
It is. And it goes even further. It even critiques the way domestic violence laws are applied, arguing that they often lean towards women's accounts and potentially overlook male victims.
Yeah, that's a tough one to talk about.
It is, but it's so important to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
So, we're already getting into some deep stuff here.
Yeah, this book doesn't shy away from anything.
What I find really interesting is how it ties this legal aspect to like a broader cultural trend. It argues that there's this societal bias against men who claim to be victims of violence.
Right.
And it's often rooted in these stereotypes about masculinity.
Like men are supposed to be tough and stoic.
Exact. And that can make it really difficult for them to come forward and say, hey, I'm actually the one being hurt here.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for me.
Okay, I'm all ears.
The book dives into the education system, and it makes this pretty bold claim that policies influenced by feminism are actually putting boys at a disadvantage.
It's a big one.
What really stood out to you in this section?
One of the things that really hit me was how it analyzes the rise in ADHD diagnoses and expulsions among boys. It suggests that the way schools are structured now, with all the emphasis on being quiet and sitting still,
Right.
it might actually be unintentionally pathologizing typical male behavior.
Yeah, like, are we punishing boys for just being boys?
Exactly.
And the book also argues that schools often suppress things like traditionally male interests
Right.
and their strengths, which can lead to boys feeling, disengaged and struggling academically.
Totally. If you don't feel like what you're good at is valued, it's hard to stay motivated.
And then there's this whole toxic masculinity discussion.
Oh, yeah.
The book really throws a curveball here.
For sure.
It argues that this whole concept is often used as a way to, control men,
Yeah.
not actually empower them.
That's a really thought-provoking take.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think the book highlights this double bind that a lot of men face these days. They're criticized if they don't embody those traditional masculine traits,
Right.
but then they're also condemned if they do display them.
It's like they're damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Exactly.
And the book argues that this leaves men feeling trapped, unsure of how to, navigate the current social climate.
Yeah, it's a confusing time for a lot of guys.
It is. And the book argues that this feeling extends to, the financial realm as well.
Oh, yeah.
It dives into how men might be systematically disadvantaged
Yeah.
by the tax and welfare systems,
Okay.
citing statistics that claim that men contribute a disproportionate amount in taxes compared to the benefits they actually receive.
Wow.
And it brings up this whole thing called the marriage penalty.
Marriage penalty.
That's this idea that men are financially penalized for being the primary earners in their families.
Interesting.
Which again ties back to the book's main argument that the system as it stands now is biased against men in all sorts of ways.
That's a pretty powerful statement.
It is, and we're just getting started.
Okay, what else is coming up?
Well, now the book is going to dive into one of its most powerful sections. It analyzes what it calls emotional terrorism.
Emotional terrorism.
Yeah, and it suggests that this is a tactic that's actually being used to manipulate and control men.
Okay, now I'm really curious.
The book uses some, like, really stark examples. Men facing false accusations, losing custody of their children, even experiencing social and professional ruin.
Wow.
Based on unverified claims. It's pretty intense.
It sounds like it.
And what's really interesting is how it connects this to, like, a broader strategy of eroding male power and influence, you know?
Okay.
It talks about the decline of those traditional male support networks.
Like what kind of network?
Things like, you know, men's groups or social clubs.
Right.
How feminist ideology might have actually contributed to this.
Like men are losing those spaces where they could connect with each other.
Exactly. And it even goes as far as talking about the impact of feminism on, like, traditionally male-dominated spaces like the military.
Wow, so it's pretty wide-reaching.
It is. It's making this bold claim that there's a deliberate effort to, you know, weaken male bonds and erode those traditional masculine values.
This book definitely doesn't hold back.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
But it's not just about pointing out problems. It also offers solutions.
That's good.
Strategies for men to, like, navigate these challenges and reclaim their power.
I'm interested to hear about those.
What are some of the key takeaways you got from that part of the book?
Well, one thing that really stuck with me was the emphasis on, like, emotional resilience. The book argues that men need to develop the strength to, you know, withstand these societal pressures and not let them dictate their self-worth.
That's so important.
It is. And it also talks about setting healthy boundaries in relationships.
Especially with women.
Yeah, and it encourages men to, like, really understand female psychology.
Not to manipulate or control,
No, not at all.
but to create healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
Exactly. It's about understanding, not control.
Ultimately, it seems like this book is advocating for men to, you know, take back control in their personal lives or relationships, and even in, like, the larger societal context.
Yeah, it's about stepping up and taking charge.
Exactly. So what do you think, what stood out to you the most from this first section of the book?
I think for me, it's how the book connects those individual experiences to, like, this larger societal framework. It helps you see how these seemingly isolated incidents might actually reflect, like, broader trends and power dynamics.
It's like seeing the world through a new lens.
Exactly.
I totally agree. It's eye-opening to consider how all these different issues might be connected in ways we haven't thought about before.
Absolutely. It's a real paradigm shift.
It is, and that's exactly what we're aiming for here on the deep dive, you know.
To get people thinking differently.
Help you understand the world around you in a deeper, more nuanced way.
Yeah, to question the narrative.
But before we move on to the next section, there's another fascinating layer to this book that I think you'll find really, really interesting.
Okay, what's that?
It delves into evolutionary
Oh, wow.
and how it might explain some of the, you know, the differences between men and women.
That's a big topic.
It is. Are you ready to explore that side of things?
Absolutely. Let's dive in. Welcome back now. Getting into the evolutionary psychology aspect, one of the things this book really emphasizes is that men and women, though equal in value and deserving of respect, have distinct biological and psychological differences,
Yeah.
shaped by, like, millions of years of evolution.
You know, that section really got me thinking. The book argues that these differences aren't just social concepts. You know, they're, like, deeply rooted in our biology, and they've played a crucial role in the survival of our species.
Yeah.
Like, we're wired differently, and those differences have, like, real-world consequences for how we interact with each other
Right.
and navigate society.
For sure.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and it's not about saying one is better than the other or anything like that.
All right.
But understanding these innate drives can help us make sense of some of the patterns we see
Yeah.
in relationships and in society as a whole.
Totally. It's like the book is saying, hey, let's take off the rose-colored glasses for a minute
Yeah.
and look at relationships from a more realistic perspective,
Yeah.
acknowledging the biological and psychological underpinnings.
Exactly. And this leads into one of the more controversial topics the book explores.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the term hypergamy?
I had, but the book really broke it down in a way that made it click for me. It's basically the idea that women are instinctively drawn to men who they perceive as having, like, higher status or more resources.
Right, and the book argues, and this is where it gets a little controversial, that
Yeah.
this isn't some arbitrary social construct. It's a biological drive that's been essential for the survival of the species throughout human history.
You know, at first that idea might sound a bit jarring, but the book presents it in a way that's not about judging women.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how these deeply ingrained biological drives influence relationship dynamics.
Exactly. It's about understanding.
Yeah.
And it goes on to suggest that understanding this concept of hypergamy can actually empower both men and women to make more informed choices
Right.
in their relationship.
Yeah, it's like providing a new framework for understanding that age-old dance between men and women, one that takes into account both biology and social influence.
Absolutely. Now, another area where the book dives deep is female psychology and how it might manifest in relationships.
This section was really eye-opening. The book goes into the emotional and psychological differences between men and women, again, using that evolutionary psychology lens, to explain why women might be more emotionally expressive and sensitive to emotional cues.
Right. It even touches on the role of hormones,
Yeah.
like estrogen and oxytocin, and how they can influence women's moods, behaviors, and relationship patterns.
It's like the book is saying, look, men and women aren't from different planets,
Right.
but we do operate on slightly different wavelengths emotionally. And recognizing these differences can help us build stronger, more harmonious relationships.
Absolutely. And the book offers some practical advice for men on how to navigate those emotional differences. It's not about trying to change women or anything like that or put them in a box. It's about developing empathy and understanding.
And ultimately, it's about recognizing that emotional intelligence isn't just about being in touch with your own feelings.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the other person's emotional landscape as well.
Which is a skill that can benefit everyone regardless of gender.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the challenges and complexities of relationships. But the book also takes a broader look at how societal structures impact men's lives. And it's not afraid to get into some pretty controversial territory.
That's right. The book really takes aim at what it calls radical feminist ideology, arguing that it has perhaps unintentionally contributed to policies and systems that often disadvantage men.
Yeah, and it doesn't hold back when it comes to the role of the state. It paints a pretty critical picture,
Yeah.
arguing that government institutions and policies can sometimes work against men's interests.
One area it really focuses on is the welfare system. It suggests that while these programs are intended to help families in need, they can sometimes create unintended consequences
Right.
that might actually harm men and undermine the traditional family structure.
For example, the book points out how unmarried mothers often receive greater benefits than married ones.
Yeah.
And it suggests that this dynamic might disincentivize marriage and discourage father involvement.
Which was probably not the intention of these programs initially.
Right.
It's a thought-provoking argument. The book also highlights the financial burden that men often shoulder through taxes, suggesting that they might disproportionately contribute to funding these programs while receiving fewer direct benefits.
It even goes as far as comparing this situation to paying for your own funeral.
Wow, that's a pretty stark image.
It is. But it's important to note that the book does back up its claims with statistics and real-life examples.
And one of the most interesting points the book makes is how it connects the welfare system to the perceived decline of fatherhood. It suggests that by inadvertently incentivizing single motherhood, the state may be pushing fathers out of the family unit.
And according to the book, this could have ripple effects on children, potentially leading to a range of issues.
Now, it's important to remember that the book isn't just about pointing fingers or placing blame.
Right.
It's about understanding these complex systems and advocating for solutions. What were some of the solutions it proposed regarding the welfare system?
But the book suggests reforming the welfare system to remove those unintended disincentives and create a more equitable playing field for fathers. It also advocates for shared parenting laws and policies that explicitly recognize the importance of fathers in children's lives.
So it's about shifting the focus from individual rights to the well-being of the family as a whole.
Exactly. Now, the book's critique of state influence extends to the legal system as well, particularly family courts. It argues that these courts are often inherently biased against men, especially when it comes to custody battles and the division of assets in divorce.
The book points to statistics indicating that mothers are awarded primary custody in the vast majority of cases, even when fathers are demonstrably involved and capable parents.
And it criticizes alimony and child support laws, suggesting they can place an unfair financial burden on men, even in situations where their ex-partners have higher earning potential or have chosen to work less.
It also delves into the issue of false accusations, arguing that this is a growing problem, particularly in the context of domestic violence and sexual harassment claims.
The book presents some chilling examples of men whose lives were upended by false allegations, highlighting the lack of due process and the devastating consequences for those who are wrongly accused. It's a stark reminder that the pursuit of justice can sometimes be flawed, and that the legal system, despite its best intentions, isn't always perfect.
And the book takes this a step further, arguing that radical feminist ideology may have actually influenced the legal system,
Right.
leading to policies and practices that are inherently biased against men. It's a bold claim, but the book backs it up with legal precedents and real-life stories.
One of the examples it cites is the Duluth model, a widely used approach to domestic violence that the book claims assumes men are always the aggressors and women are always the victims.
Right. The book argues that this model, while well-intentioned, overlooks the reality of female on male violence and creates a system where men are often presumed guilty without sufficient evidence.
It's a very controversial topic, and the book definitely sparks debate with this point.
And this theme of potential systemic bias, according to the book, extends to the workplace as well.
You're right. The book suggests that certain feminist-driven policies like gender quotas and affirmative action, while aiming to create more equality, might unintentionally lead to reverse discrimination.
Oh, wow.
Where men are unjustly disadvantaged even when they're more qualified for certain positions.
That's a tough one.
The book offers examples of men being passed over for promotions or denied opportunities simply because of their gender. It argues that these well-intended policies might be creating a system where men are penalized.
What I found particularly compelling is how the book connects this potential systemic bias to the psychological well-being of men.
Right. The book argues that the constant barrage of negative messages about masculinity, combined with the systemic disadvantages men might face, can lead to feelings of alienation, frustration, and despair.
It even links this to the rise in male suicide rates, suggesting that it's a symptom of a deeper crisis of masculinity in the modern world.
It's a sobering thought that the structures of society not only impact our outward lives, but also shape our inner world.
Absolutely.
And the book goes even further, introducing this concept of a psychological war being waged against men.
This is where the book gets really intense.
Yeah.
It suggests that radical feminist ideology, while aiming to fight for equality, might be inadvertently engaged in a subtle but systematic effort to undermine male power influence and even self-esteem.
The book uses the term emotional terrorism to describe this, arguing that it's a strategy to control and manipulate men.
And it gives examples of how this might play out in relationships, the workplace, and even in the media.
It's like the book is saying that men are constantly bombarded with messages that make them feel inadequate, guilty, and even dangerous, simply because of their gender.
It paints a pretty bleak picture. But remember, the book also offers solutions. It encourages men to be resilient, set boundaries, and reject those toxic messages. What are your thoughts on this psychological war concept?
You know, it's definitely a provocative idea. And while I don't necessarily agree with everything the book says, it does make you think about the subtle ways that societal messages can shape our perceptions of ourselves and others.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this book such a compelling read. It challenges conventional wisdom and encourages us to look at the world through a new lens.
We've covered a lot of ground in this section.
We have.
From evolutionary psychology to the role of the state and the potential impact of radical feminist ideology.
Right.
But there's still so much more to unpack.
I know, right?
Are you ready to dive into the next chapter?
Absolutely. Let's see what other insights this book has to offer.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
So we've talked about, relationships, those societal structures, even like this potential psychological war against men.
Yeah, lots to unpack.
Now let's get, I guess, even more specific and see how the book argues that, radical feminist ideology has actually impacted these particular areas of men's lives, like education, sports, even healthcare.
Yeah, it's interesting how it zooms in on those areas.
It starts with education, and it doesn't paint a very pretty picture.
No.
It claims that policies that were influenced by these feminist ideals, while well-intentioned, have kind of unintentionally created an environment that's failing boys.
Right.
And this was definitely one of the sections that really hit home for me.
Yeah.
The book highlights this widening gender gap in education, how boys are falling behind girls in almost every subject.
Yeah, that's a big concern.
And it goes beyond just grades.
Right.
Book points to those alarming statistics, the higher rates of ADHD diagnoses among boys, the increased likelihood of expulsion from school.
Yeah.
And then that really concerning rise in suicide rates among young men.
It's heartbreaking.
It's really tough to think about. And the book argues that these trends aren't just random.
Yeah.
They're symptoms of a system that might be struggling to accommodate the unique ways that boys actually learn and develop. It's in trying to be, more inclusive, we might be inadvertently punishing boys for simply being boys.
Exactly. And I think the book makes a really interesting point about how this push to eliminate toxic masculinity could actually be creating a double bind for boys.
It's they're told to be, less masculine, less aggressive.
Right.
But then they're also criticized when they don't display those more traditional masculine traits like assertiveness or leadership.
That's a no-win situation.
Exactly. And The book argues that, like, this double bind can be incredibly confusing and damaging for boys,
For sure.
impacting, their self-esteem, their academic performance, their overall well-being.
Right, it affects them on so many levels.
Okay, so now another area the book tackles is sports.
Okay.
And it argues that radical feminism has even infiltrated the world of sports,
Wow.
leading to, like, fewer opportunities and less support for male athletes.
That's a bold claim.
It is a bold claim, but the book does offer some, like, interesting points to consider.
Okay, like what?
But, for example, it talks about the increasing focus on women's sports,
Right.
and the push for, like, gender-neutral sports categories.
Mm-hmm.
It even touches on, the growing criticism of those, like, traditionally male-dominated sports,
Yeah.
like football and boxing, which are often portrayed as, violent or promoting toxic masculinity.
I see where they're going with that.
The book's point seems to be that this shift isn't just about, promoting equality. It argues that there might be this, like, underlying effort to actually devalue male athletic achievement and diminish the importance of sports for, like, boys' development.
Interesting.
The book also criticizes, the way the media often portrays male athletes, focusing on, like, scandals, aggression, reinforcing those toxic masculinity stereotypes.
Right, whereas female athletes are often celebrated as this, like, positive role model.
It's almost like the book is suggesting that there's this cultural narrative emerging that positions, like, male athletes as problematic,
Interesting.
while female athletes are, like, championed,
Yeah.
even when their achievements are,
That's a
comfort.
different lens, for sure.
And the book argues that this kind of narrative can have a real impact on boys, affecting their self-esteem, their aspirations, even their willingness to participate in sports.
Yeah, it makes you think about the messages we're sending.
Okay, so we've talked about education, sports, but the book doesn't stop there.
What else?
It also dives into, men's health,
Oh, wow.
arguing that it's often overlooked and underfunded, both by the medical establishment and by, society as a whole.
That's a big one.
That's another area where the book raises some, like, really important questions.
Like what?
Well, it points to, the lower life expectancy for men, the higher rates of suicide, the lack of attention given to men's specific health issues like, prostate cancer.
Right. It's like those issues are often swept under the rug.
It's a stark reminder that, like, being male comes with its own set of health challenges. Challenges that the book suggests are often ignored or, downplayed.
And the book doesn't hesitate to point a finger at radical feminism here,
Yeah.
arguing that the increased focus on women's health issues may have come at the expense of men's health. It even claims that the medical establishment has adopted, like, this female-centric approach
Right.
that sometimes dismisses men's concerns.
The book also touches on mental health, pointing out that men are often discouraged from, expressing their emotion
Right.
or seeking help for mental health issues.
Yeah, like they're supposed to just suck it up.
It's like they're told to man up and deal with their problems alone, while women are encouraged to be vulnerable and seek support.
It's a double standard for sure.
It's important to recognize that these are, like, complex issues. And the book definitely presents a particular perspective. But what I appreciate is that it doesn't just dwell on the problems.
Right. It offers solutions.
It advocates for, increased funding for men's health research, promotes mental health awareness among men, and encourages men to, like, take a more proactive role in their own well-being.
It's about empowering men.
It's about empowering men to prioritize their health, both physical and mental.
So we've explored a lot of ground with this book.
We have. It's been a journey.
It's challenged conventional wisdom, raised some, tough questions, sparked some intense debate.
But at its core, I think what this book is really about is, like, reclaiming masculinity. Not the, toxic, aggressive version that's often criticized,
Right.
but, like, this strong, resilient, life-affirming masculinity.
Yeah.
It's grounded in traditional values, purpose, and a sense of self-worth.
It's about finding that balance.
It encourages men to, like, reject those negative messages that they're constantly bombarded with and embrace their unique strengths and contributions to society.
Absolutely. It's about celebrating what it means to be a man.
It's about men stepping up, taking responsibility for their lives, their families, their communities, and building a future where they can actually thrive.
I love that message.
And I think it's important to, reiterate that this book isn't about hating women or, creating this battle of the sexes.
No, not at all.
It's about men understanding their place in a world that's, like, rapidly changing. A world that sometimes feels, hostile towards traditional masculinity.
Right. It's about navigating that new landscape.
It's about recognizing the forces that are shaping their lives, both positive and negative, and equipping them with the tools to navigate those forces with confidence and resilience.
Yeah, it's about empowerment.
It's about starting conversations, challenging the status quo, and creating a more equitable and fulfilling future for everyone.
That's a vision I can get behind.
If you're, intrigued by what you've heard today and want to explore these ideas further, you can find this book on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
It's definitely a book that will make you think and challenge your assumptions.
And as a final thought, I want to leave you with this. If this book is right, and there's this deliberate, even if unintentional effort to undermine traditional masculinity, what might the long-term consequences be for, society as a whole? That's something to ponder. Until next time, keep those minds open, those questions coming. We'll be back with another deep dive soon.